Nephilim. Who are the Nephilim? The word Nephilim is only found in the Bible 2 times. We find it, of course, in our text in Genesis chapter 6, but it is found and located one other time, and that's in Numbers 13 and 33, and we're going to come to that, so you don't have to turn to it just yet. But in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4, the Bible says, and now would be a good time to open that Bible. Genesis chapter 6 verse 4, in those days and for some time after, giant Nephilites, your translation may read Nephilim, same people. Giant Nephilites lived on the earth, for whenever the sons of God had intercourse with women, they gave birth to children who became the heroes of famous warriors of ancient times. Now let's go into the book of Numbers and the 13th chapter. Numbers chapter 13, and go down to verse 33. Now I'm reading this out of the New American Standard Bible, the NASB, because it's very accurate, especially in this passage, because this difficult passage, because scholars have wrestled with it throughout the centuries, that's why the words are different in various translations, whether they say Nephilim or Nephilites or giants, etc. That's the reason why, depending upon the translation of the Bible that you're holding in your hand, it may vary. But this is accurate from the Hebrew, Numbers 13:33 out of the NASB. There also we saw the Nephilim, sons of Anak, are a part of the Nephilim, and we became like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. And you'll find that word Nephilim translated from the original text, not only in the New American Standard Bible, you'll also find it translated as Nephilim in the English Standard Version, the ESV, another very accurate and popular version. By the way, almost all of your proper modern translations are accurate. And many people have asked me about the King James Version, and I even am approached from time to time in my preaching and travels, and I've had people that have come to me after a service and accused me of being a heretic because I didn't preach out of the King James Version. And what a lot of people don't know, the King James Version was written in 1611. But did you know there were over 100,000 changes in the King James Version from 1611 till now? So even the King James has been updated many, many, many times. But anyway, by the way, an upcoming study is what is the best translation of the Bible to read and study? That question has come in frequently enough that I need to devote an entire teaching to it. And so very soon I am going to be doing a teaching, making that available on all social media platforms. It'll be on Facebook live. We'll record it live. It'll also be on YouTube live. It'll be on our podcast channel. And we'll be making that available to you. And we're going to address, is the King James Version the best translation to use? Very common question. But without going into that depth, any modern translation, now notice that I didn't say all, because, you know, books like translations, I think like The Message, and I could go down a host of others, those are not academic, scholarly translations. And you can read them for poetry, but you need to get a good translation of the Bible. Again, without going down that path very far, I promise that I'll be doing a thorough teaching on the modern translations and what you should own, what you should trust. Are there discrepancies? Have modern translations taken things out of the Bible improperly? Are they stripping truth from the Bible in various translations? All of the accusations, we'll cover that thoroughly. But again, Nephilim is found in the NSAB. It's found in the New International Version. I know it's found in the English Standard Version because I was reading out of all of these Bibles last night at about 2:30 in the morning. And so I well remember them being there. But in all of the text, Genesis chapter 6, don't miss this, it leaves no question as to where the Nephilim come from. So if we're talking and teaching about the Nephilim, and before I answer who they are, and I am going to answer that, I need to answer where did they come from. And where the Nephilim originated, the Bible leaves absolutely no room except for one interpretation, because it tells us in Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4, you can read it there. It says, the Nephilim were the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. So we know exactly where the Nephilim originated. They were the offspring or the spawn of the unholy, perverted union of the sons of men, which we've already established were fallen angels or demonic beings, cohabiting with and involved in sexual perversions with human women. Now, there's a part to that I'm going to unfold at the end of this teaching, so hold on, because there is a possibility there that proper teaching should address, and I'm going to address it. But since we know from the evidence of part 1 that the sons of God are fallen angels and demonic beings, and I hope you have that in your notes. I mean, if you're asked the question, who are the sons of God in Genesis 6:2 and Genesis 6:4, the response is, well, there's been great debate amongst scholars throughout the centuries, but it is clearly the sons of God are the fallen angels or demonic beings. And that's the proper answer to that. But let's go to Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4. Genesis 6 verse 4. I want you to take a closer look. The Nephilim, reading out of the NASB, New American Standard Bible, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward when the sons of God, fallen angels, demonic beings, that's the sons of God, fallen angels, demonic beings, came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men of old, men of renown. Now, where the waters of interpretation through the centuries have gotten a little muddy is some scholars and commentators have translated the word Nephilim as giants or fallen ones. And depending upon the translation of the Bible that you hold in your hand, it may translate that particular verse as giants or fallen ones. And even among the most brilliant of scholars through the centuries, there's been debate on how to properly translate that from the Hebrew. One reason Nephilim is often translated as fallen ones is because of its relation to the original Hebrew. And of course, if you've followed us any length of time, or perhaps you're a new Christian and you've not been taught, the Bible is actually a compilation of 66 books. We have the books of the Old Testament. We have the books of the New Testament. The Old Testament was primarily written in Hebrew, some Aramaic, and then the New Testament predominantly written in Greek. The Hebrew of the Old Testament is not a living language. It's not the Hebrew that they speak in Israel today and other parts of the world. And the Greek in the New Testament manuscripts is not the Greek that they would speak in Greece and parts of the world today. It's a biblical dead language Hebrew and a biblical dead language Greek, Koine Greek. But the original Hebrew that's sometimes translated as giants or fallen ones is connected to the original Hebrew word. Not important that you remember all of the original words in Hebrew and in Greek, but for your edification, the Hebrew word is nephal. That's the original word, which in Hebrew means to fall. N-A-P-H-A-L in the Hebrew. Nephal. It means to fall. So that actually adds further strength to the view that I've already presented to you, that the sons of God are fallen angels or fallen demonic beings, and so therefore their offspring would also have the DNA of the fallen ones. And so just an insight, and that's not too deep. I think a serious student of the Bible, you need to have that in your notes. And that is my goal in being a trusted teacher in your life, is I want to increase your biblical vocabulary. I want to increase your understanding of difficult passages. I want you to be able to open to any place in the Bible and know exactly what God was trying to communicate to us in these last days. But again, being honest with you, there's still debate that goes on around this subject as to whether the Nephilim are fallen angels or giants, and I'm going to explain to you why there's some confusion on that. However, and this is important, Genesis chapter 6 never states that the Nephilim are giants. It's not there. And as I often do, what's rule number one of properly interpreting your Bible? You interpret the Bible by the Bible. You read the text, and you read the text within the full story or the full context. And if necessary, you read it within the full umbrella of the entire book until you understand what the narrative is. Every book in the Bible was written as a single letter and was meant to be read as an entire narrative. And that's why interpretation many times goes off the rails into improper teaching and heresy and false teachers and wackos from the left and from the right, because people just don't know how to properly read and interpret the Bible. Rule number one in proper biblical interpretation is we always interpret the Bible from the Bible. With that said, in Genesis chapter 6, it never says, it does not say that the Nephilim were giants. It's just not there. What it does say is that they were mighty men who were of old, or mighty men of renown. So the verse that sheds light on the Nephilim possibly being giants is our passage in Numbers. Let's go back to Numbers 13. Numbers chapter 13 and go down to verse 33. Again, I'm reading out of the NASB. There also we saw the Nephilim. The sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim, and we became like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. So here is a passage that many try to interpret. The children of Israel have sent spies out to go out on missions and reconnaissance and to bring back report as they're preparing to go into their promised land. And these men, these spies that have been sent out, they came back and they said, we're scared to death. We're just going to be honest with you. The men there, they were big. We were like grasshoppers in their sight. Well, were they exaggerating? Possibly. Were they telling the truth? Possibly. But I don't think there's any doubt that there was a comparison among all of the spies, that when they looked at their average height and the size of the men who were in the land they were about to take, they said, we were like grasshoppers. Well, that would be an exaggeration. Even by the actual mathematic measurement of giants and the ratio of a grasshopper to the average size male, they obviously were exaggerating mathematically. But that's not the point. Being translated from the original text, they were saying, these men were massively bigger than we. Well, what about a man who goes to an NBA basketball game And he's there courtside watching men who are 7 feet tall, 7 feet 4, 7 feet 6, 7 foot 1, 6 foot 11. Well, you might come back and tell somebody, hey, I went to an NBA basketball game and I was like a grasshopper compared to those guys that are playing. Or perhaps someone who's small in stature. Let's just say, for example, a little girl. And she goes to see her grandpa for the first time, and grandpa's 6'4" and 265 pounds. And, you know, in the eyes of the granddaughter, you know, man, grandpa's a giant, he's a big man. Well, comparatively. So those are just some practical examples to give you insight as to how translation may have gone. But let me read to you that same passage out of the King James Version. Because the King James Version says, and there we saw the giants. It didn't translate it properly because the proper translation from the original should have been Nephilim or Nephilites. But in 1611, there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. And so, again, I'll leave it to all of the great scholars of the ages and centuries to pull their hair out on that. All I'm telling you is that proper biblical interpretation, it doesn't say giants, it says Nephilim. And Numbers 13 gives us the comparison from where the argument starts. Well, mathematically, we were as grasshoppers in their sight. How big were they? Well, the text doesn't say, history doesn't say, and so it's the circle of debate. Let me give you 4 different views on this, and then we'll conclude. Number 1, the first view, and this is, by the way, 4 views on who are the Nephilim. If you're taking notes, who are the Nephilim? 4 views that have been most frequently debated throughout the centuries. Number 1, the first view is that the fallen angels, the sons of God, fallen angels, had relations with the daughters of men. And through this unnatural relationship, it resulted in part human, part supernatural being. True. There are 3 genders in grammar. There is masculine, there is feminine, and there is neuter. Those are your 3 genders. But as I've taught you and showed you in the Bible, 285 times in the Holy Bible, when we have reference to angels, it's always in the masculine, without exception. There are no female angels in the Bible. There are no neuter angels in the Bible. They always appeared in the masculine. They always appeared as men. They dressed like men. They spoke like men. Those who viewed them that didn't even know they were angels on occasions in text, we see they assumed they were men. And so, and again, highly debated text. The debate is, well, we may concede because all 285 times they appeared in the masculine that they're men, but how much man was there? Did they have the same biology? Did they have the same anatomy as a human man? Did they have the ability to have sexual relations? And again, these are the great debates. I'm not going to get into that. I don't think it's vitally important, other than I don't concede on all angels being masculine. There's just nothing in the Bible to support anything else but all angels in the Bible are masculine. The names of the angels that we have in the Bible: Michael, masculine; Gabriel, masculine; Lucifer, masculine. Every name. There's no biblical basis for creating any other debate on angels being feminine or neuter. They are masculine. End of biblical story on that. The third position, and this is called the Sethite view, and it is held by some scholars. The Sethite view defines the Son of God or the sons of God as the righteous line of Seth. And if you'll remember in part 1, I showed you why that's not possible. Because there were only a handful from the lineage of Seth that were righteous. Noah being one, and Enosh being one, and Eber being one. But by and large, the entire lineage of Seth were wicked. They were the ones who introduced idolatry on planet Earth. So the Sethite view, defining the sons of God as the righteous line of Seth, that's fairly weak in biblical scholarship. But the weakest of all of the interpretations on who are the Nephilim is the fourth view. And that fourth view, held by just a minority, and sound scholarship doesn't hold this view. But through the years, there are still some that hold on to this for perhaps denominational reasons, or creed reasons, or ego reasons, or who knows. But the fourth view, that the Nephilim were simply fallen men. But again, I'm not even going to spend time on that because there's really nothing to debate from sound scholarship. So in conclusion, based upon the strong biblical apologetic and the scriptural evidence concerning who the sons of God were, who were the sons of God? We've established they were the fallen angels, demonic beings, demonic fallen angels, demons, devils, whatever terminology you want to use. The sons of God were fallen angels. I believe, therefore, since the Nephilim, and we've already established this in this teaching, the Nephilim were the offspring. The Bible leaves no wiggle room on this. In Genesis it tells us the sons of God had perverted sexual relations with the daughters of men, human women, and gave birth to Nephilim. So the Nephilim were the offspring or the spawn of fallen angels and human women. And again, strong biblical support surrounds this view. Job chapter 1 verse 6 and Job chapter 38 verse 7 that I shared with you in part 1 use the exact same term found in Genesis chapter 6. Theologians historically have interpreted that the sons of God as angels or fallen angels because it fits systematically and thematically across all texts. It's the one view that has harmony from Genesis 6:2, Genesis 6:4, the three passages in Job, the passage in Daniel, the passage in 2 Peter 2, the book of Jude. It's the only view that has thematic, consistent interpretation throughout the Bible. The sons of God were fallen angels, demonic beings who had perverted sexual relations with human women who gave birth to Nephilim, who were fallen ones by DNA, perhaps a hybrid. We can't get into a whole lot of detail because the text doesn't give it to us. We don't allow for speculation, but it would seem that they were a hybrid, a mix between the demonic and the human, or at least demon-possessed babies. But they were supernatural, the Nephilim. The main scriptural passage from the New Testament, and I want to go back to it as we wrap this teaching up, is I want you to go to Jude chapter 1 and verses 6 and 7. Let's go back there one more time. Jude chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, as Sodom and Gomorrah